On Tuesday, Vice President Mike Pence casted a tie-breaking vote in the Senate to advance some version of Trumpcare. Now, this vote came a week after we learned that the Senate version of the House Republican bill failed to pass because it couldn't muster enough Republican support. Now, what this vote signals is that while Republicans don't know what they ultimately want to replace the Affordable Care Act with, they do want to move forward with something that could replace the ACA or just repeal the ACA alone without replacing it. So this vote demonstrates that the party is getting desperate because they promised to repeal the ACA, and after failing to sell us not one but two Republican healthcare plans, now what they're going to do basically is just throw a bunch of plans against the wall and see what sticks. So either way, we know that in the end, if they do in fact pass anything, we're going to get screwed. So protesters on the day that this vote was casted had the perfect message for Senate Republicans.
As for the ayes and nays. As for the ayes and nays. Sergeant at Arms will restore order in the chamber. Sergeant at Arms will restore order in the chamber, please.
Now, the protesters that you heard there are telling Republicans, kill the bill, don't kill us, because so far, whatever healthcare plan that they've come up with results in millions upon millions of Americans losing their health insurance. So, regardless of what happens, the Republican Party is desperate to get it done. So, the party even pressured Senator John McCain to come back to D.C. while he was literally recovering from surgery after he was diagnosed with a very aggressive form of brain cancer, as you all know, because, they wanted him to be the tie-breaking vote. And John McCain actually did make it back to D.C. and was welcomed back by his Senate colleagues as a hero with a standing ovation, where he then ultimately voted to strip healthcare away from millions of Americans after receiving the best care that money can buy for himself.
What's his moral barometer? Where is it at? It's nowhere.
So, after he casted this vote, presumably for partisan reasons, he then gave what mainstream media pundits would refer to as a rousing speech, where he then talked about the need for bipartisanship.
Our deliberations can still be important and useful, but I think we'd all agree they haven't been overburdened by greatness lately.
No shit.
So after this vote took place, President Trump then took a moment to announce how the Republican Party just voted to successfully fuck over the average American voter.
I'm very happy to announce that with 0 of the Democrats' votes, the motion to proceed on health care has just passed. And now we move forward towards truly great health care for the American people. We look forward to that.
Great, so we're moving forward on a bill that will provide us with truly great health care. Now, what exactly does that entail? Well, he doesn't know. We don't know. Nobody really knows yet. He just knows that whatever they come up with, if it does get passed, it's going to be truly great healthcare, even though whatever plan they've proposed thus far results in millions of people losing their coverage. That's not my opinion. That's based on the nonpartisan CBO scores. But, I mean, you just got to trust him here, guys. He doesn't know what they're going to pass, but it's going to be truly great healthcare because Donald Trump says so. Now, on Wednesday, Senate Republicans voted on whether or not to just repeal the Affordable Care Act altogether with no replacement plan, and thankfully, that was defeated in a 45-55 vote, and one GOP senator even announced his intention to introduce a sham single-payer amendment to distract everyone on the left and say, well, look, you have the Democratic Party, we gave them the option of single payer and X amount of Democrats voted against it, so they really want us to be divided and stop fighting Trump and fight each other right now. So it's actually pretty clever, but it's a sham amendment, and it really doesn't matter who does or doesn't vote for it. In fact, Bernie Sanders said that he will not be voting for it and instead will be proposing his own single-payer bill. But, I mean, what they're doing now, nobody really knows precisely what's happening because the whole process has just become so convoluted and there's so many bills being considered. So at this point, we'll hear from a senator who is going to try to break down what exactly is going on now.
I think I could say without any hesitancy that there's nobody in the United States Senate who has a clue what's going on or what will go on. What Trump thinks is a great step forward is part of his belief that we should throw 22 million people off of health insurance, raise premiums for older workers, and cut Medicaid by $800 billion. That's not what the American people think is a great step forward. What I think is there's so much confusion and disagreement within the Republican ranks that what they may end up doing is coming together on a much, much narrower bill. It would be a bill that perhaps repeals the individual mandate, repeals the employer mandate, repeals the tax on medical devices. And then if they could pass that, and by the way, there's no guarantee that they can pass that, if they could pass that, they would then go to conference committee with the House. But this narrow bill is very, very different from the disastrous bill in the House, and whether they could reach agreement and how long that would take, frankly, nobody knows.
So now what they're trying to do is meet somewhere between full repeal and partial repeal, as Bernie Sanders alluded to. Now, Scott Newman of NPR explains Republicans are looking at a so-called skinny repeal that would surgically remove some key provisions from Obamacare while leaving the rest intact, at least for now. The skinny repeal would take out requirements for individuals and employers to get health insurance, a feature that is central to the Affordable Care Act's goal of expanding risk pools and lowering costs. The GOP plan would get rid of the medical device tax intended as a revenue source to fund the current health law. The proposal would also eliminate a public health fund provision. Senators have already rejected the Better Care Reconciliation Act replacement plan and a repeal-only proposal so far. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office has said the Better Care Reconciliation Act would have left 22 million more people uninsured by 2026, whereas simply repealing Obamacare without an immediate replacement would have resulted in 32 million more without healthcare insurance in the same time frame. The CBO estimated on Wednesday, at the request of Democrats, that a skinny repeal could result in 16 million more uninsured. So as I sit here trying to put together this segment to tell you what the hell is going on with healthcare in America, we got another update. So this skinny bill that I just told you about, well, it was defeated literally as I'm sitting here trying to edit this video. So according to The Hill, Senator John McCain killed the last resort Senate Republican healthcare bill in a surprise vote early Friday morning, voting against a pared-down proposal that GOP leaders released only hours earlier. Now, here's my absolute favorite part about the update. McConnell appeared almost distraught after McCain's surprise vote and seemed close to choking up on the floor after falling short of his promise to repeal Obamacare. This is clearly a disappointing moment, he said.
Oh, the tears of unfathomable sadness. Yummy, yummy, you guys.
Now, I'm going to leave you with what Lindsey Graham said about the so-called skinny repeal, and then we'll get back to the original segment that I recorded.
We've been asked by our leadership for days now to vote on the least common denominator, the skinny bill, because the pitch is if you vote for this skinny bill, then we can go to conference, then we can get my bill scored, we can get Ted Cruz's bill scored, we can get other people's bills scored that has promise of, maybe bringing us together, but they're not ready to be, they're not scored yet. That makes eminent sense to me with one condition: we actually go to conference. There's increasing concern on my part and others that what the House will do is take whatever we pass, the so-called skinny bill, not take it to conference, go directly to the House floor, vote on it, and that goes to the president's desk with the argument this is better than doing nothing. Here's my response. The skinny bill as policy is a disaster. The skinny bill as a replacement for Obamacare is a fraud. The skinny bill is a vehicle to get in conference to find a replacement. It is not a replacement in of itself. The policy is terrible because you eliminate the individual employer mandate, which we all want eliminated, but we actually have an overall solution to the problem of Obamacare. So you're going to have increased premiums, and most of Obamacare stays in place if the skinny bill becomes law. Not only do we not replace Obamacare, we politically own the collapse of health care. I'd rather get out of the way and let it collapse than have a half-ass approach where it is now our problem. So we're not going to do that with our vote.
So their ultimate goal is to minimize the total amount of individuals that will lose their health insurance as a result of whatever atrocity of a bill they come up with, because whatever they're going to propose, it's going to result in people losing their health insurance coverage. That's what's going to happen if you repeal the Affordable Care Act. So they're trying to bring down that number and strip away as much of the Affordable Care Act as they possibly can, while not doing too much damage, or at least just enough to where they're still electorally viable in 2018. And once they finally come up with a plan that will minimize the amount of political blowback they'll receive, then they'll most likely settle on a bill. See, because the goal itself for Republicans, it's not to fix Obamacare so people can actually get coverage, because they don't really care about that. The ultimate goal is to repeal it and replace it with some shittier option, just so that way they can check off the one legislative achievement that they claimed they would accomplish prior to retaking control of government. But either way, whatever they come up with, we can anticipate that we're all going to be getting fucked over. Lots of us are going to lose insurance coverage if they do in fact agree on a bill. But thankfully, there's some really clever senators like Jeff Merkley who are trying to throw a wrench in their plans by proposing hundreds of amendments to stall the process. So at this point, it's very difficult to predict what's going to happen, but we know that we're going to see a lot of different iterations of Trumpcare or Ryan-care, whatever you want to call it, but the goal is to strip away Obamacare, chip away at it as much as they possibly can, to where the consequences won't be overwhelmingly negative, but still negative, just again, so that way they can check off one legislative achievement. It shows their true agenda, because Republicans don't care about the American people. They don't care about expanding health coverage. All they care about is appeasing their donors in the health insurance industry and trying to do something legislatively. I mean, they just want one victory under their belt. And of course, they want it to be the one thing that they boasted about for the last 8 years. They claimed they would repeal the Affordable Care Act, and they want to make sure they get it done, because if they don't, they look more incompetent than we already know they are. So look, at the end of the day, now is the time to put pressure on your senators and let them know that we are not going to approve of any repeal, be it full or skinny, that makes Americans lose health insurance. The only answer is single payer. We're about expanding coverage, not going backwards. So whatever these scumbag Republicans come up with, we've got to fight them tooth and nail, and we do have time. We don't know what's going to happen, but we have time to fight them. So now's the time for you to make some calls.
Support this podcast by joining the independent progressive media revolution today at humanistreport.com.